Today's the big day. We are at weekend 5 and we're going to pull the engine. There's a few little things that are left to get done here before I can actually start yanking it out. But I'm just going to jump right into it because I'm super excited about getting this thing out of here. It's been 4 weeks for those of you who have been following along so far. It's been a ton of fun and I'm looking forward to the next step and really starting to tear the engine down and seeing what I can do with that. So wish me luck. So now that everything's hooked up, I've brought in my lovely assistant Christine to help sort of keep an eye on things and just help out where necessary. It's definitely good to have an extra set of hands in case something goes wrong, and quite frankly, once we're moving the engine away from the car, the engine started swinging a lot, so having her here to help out was really a godsend and really made sure that things were safe, both for me and the car and my wife. And voila, she is free. Time to move her out of the way and get her down on the ground because quite frankly I'm still a little concerned about having this thing hanging way up in the air, and we'll move on to some next steps. Alright, that's it. Engine's out. It's 4.5 weeks worth of work, but super happy with how it came out. I don't think I damaged anything. Best I can tell, it was a slight hissing noise or air escaping noise. At one point I thought I might have hit one of the air conditioning cooling lines, but I don't think I did. I think we're good. I think it was actually just the sound of air escaping as the rest of the radiator fluid dripped out and onto the floor. So yeah, like I say, quite happy with it. Tomorrow, hopefully, we get the transmission off so I can get this thing mounted to an engine stand. We'll see. So it's the next day here at the Geeks Garage, and I'm going to try and get the transmission off. What you're going to see here is a time lapse of well over an hour's worth of work trying to get a very small bolt out of the engine mount. It had fallen in and blocked my ability to be able to get to the last bolt to take the transmission off. So transmission came off okay. There was a piece of the flange that actually holds or seals the turbo onto the exhaust that had broken off and fallen into the engine mount, which blocked the ability to get to the last bolt
to actually pull the transmission off. So that was a lot of fun to try and get out of there. But now that that's off, I'm trying to get ready to mount this thing to the engine stand, and the clutch and flywheel stand in my way. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing at this point, but I'm going to film it in case somebody else gets to this point as well and says, I don't know what I'm doing at this point, and hopefully this will help. It looks like I should be able to take the clutch plate off, doing some quick research, take the clutch plate off, and then I should be able to get to the flywheel and be able to take the flywheel off. We'll see whether or not that's true as we go forward here. So here's what I ended up doing. Turns out you can take the clutch plate off and the flywheel off very easily. The big thing is when you're removing the bolts, you need to make sure that you remove them in kind of a cross pattern. Otherwise you have a tendency or could potentially warp either of the two pieces. So yeah, that was all there was to it. Pretty easy. Alright, let me show you something. So if you're going to get one of the Harbor Freight engine stands, I think I know where the mounts are going to go. But in order to get to these bolts with the engine stand mount pieces, this has to come off. In order to get this off, you got to disconnect all sorts of stuff. The one that's a problem is this bolt right here. The reason why it's a problem is because when this is sitting where it's supposed to, there is no way to get a wrench on the bolt. Normally that wouldn't be an issue. You'd say, okay, Mark, just take this whole thing off. Not a big deal. Yeah, the problem is that the bracket that holds that on has a bolt that goes through that's part of the engine lift mount. So you can't take it off. So here's what you do. If you get this bolt out here, and then you get this bolt out down here, you can actually pull this forward on the metal a little bit. The metal will bend. We should be able to push that back later. Once you make that metal bend, you're able to get this last bolt out. Now, in theory, at this point, I'm pretty sure I should be able to get this piece off. Once this piece is off, then we should be able to finish mounting the engine. So that's for anyone who's trying to do this. Hopefully that helps. I know I just was ready to take the whole thing off the engine hoist and figure out how to deal with it, and they said, well, let me just try bending this a little bit, and that was enough. So something to watch for. Makes it a little bit easier. Alright, so I finally got the engine mount on, and you know, I went online trying to find how do you do this, what's the right way to put the arms, etc., etc. The only thing I could find was a couple of posts that said something along the lines of, if you can't figure out how to do this yourself, then you probably shouldn't be taking the engine apart, which was not very helpful. So, here's how I did it.
Herbert looks down the middle, fires it short, activates attention to 6, trying to head to the end zone, fighting his way, and I don't know.
These two right here are the short ones, and these two are the long ones. So everything's tightened on nice and tight, and hopefully that's going to do it. Now that we've got the bracket on, let's try and get this mounted to the stand.
ball was tipped, so they're going to pick that flag up. The ball was tipped and the receiver tried to stop and come back to it because it fell short. And Edmonds, of course, didn't see that. It looked like he the ball was tipped. There's no foul for defensive pass interference. The ball was tipped. Second out.
Well, that was impressive. Let's see that again. Alright, so you probably saw that. It took me a little while to just calm down. There's a reason, apparently, why they say you should have a second person helping you when you're rotating the engine. It's a lot heavier than you would think it would be. Luckily, as far as I can tell, nothing broke, which is great. And it certainly tested and made sure that everything is really solid. Little bruise from when the handle swung around, hit me. But other than that, I'm gonna live. So, word of warning, they're a lot heavier than you think they are. Alright, well, that's going to do it for weekend 5. Didn't get quite as far as I wanted to, but, you know, not too bad. Engine's out, engine's on the stand. Nobody was injured when the engine flipped. Made a big mess. Most of it's cleaned up now. So, yeah, I think that's where we're at. Next weekend, we're going to start trying to tear apart the engine. We'll see what kind of damage is there, see if we can figure out why that really nasty tick clunking noise was coming from. So, have a good week. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you click like. Give me any thoughts and comments below. Certainly would love if somebody else has done this before. Would love extra hints and tips. I'm just trying to figure this out as I go. So, with all that being said, have a good week. See ya.